carriage to church on Sunday morning. Fifth inning. The greatest baseball players in the world. Negro League All-Stars. The greatest untapped reservoir of raw material in the history of our game is the black race. Branch Rickey, owner of the Brooklyn Dodgers. If you ask most people what they know about the Negro Leagues, they probably won't be able to tell you much. They might name a few players like Satchel Paige, Josh Gibson, or maybe Cool Papa Bell, but that's usually about it. These guys were excellent players for sure, but the Negro Leagues were much more than just a few ball players. Satchel, Josh, and Cool Papa were great athletes because they played against other great athletes. Satchel Paige was one of our finest pitchers, but we had other guys who threw just as hard and even harder. Josh Gibson was a powerful hitter, but we had other fellas who could hit just as far. The Negro Leagues were full of guys who were stars in their own right. Many of our guys could have rewritten the record books if they had been given the chance to play in the majors. We had a fella named George Mule Suttles, who played for the Newark Eagles. He was a big one. We used to say he hit the ball like a mule kicks. Fans would yell, "Kick, Mule, kick!" He'd take a great big swing like Babe Ruth. He'd even thrill you when he struck out. Darn near screwed himself into the ground when he missed. But when he connected, he'd send it high and far. He killed curveballs. They would have to stop the game to measure how far they went. One of our best hitters was Norman Turkey Stearns. He was a quiet but peculiar fella who used to talk to his bats. Turkey said his nickname came from the pot belly he had as a child that made him look kind of like a little turkey. He had an odd batting stance and would choke up on the bat. But he sure could bust 'em. He had more home runs than anyone in the league. We had another fella, Judd Wilson. Mean fella. Real big upper body and little old legs. His knuckles were just about in the dirt. He scared the daylights out of pitchers. He crowded the plate and wouldn't back off. Just let the ball hit him so he could get on base. He could hit that long ball too. But he had a bad temper. Always got into fights. Used to bully everybody, even the umpires. If they made a call he didn't agree with, he would go after them. Chase those poor fellas all around the field. Oscar Charleston was one of the greatest ball players, black or white, in the history of the game. Certainly one of the best in his day. Many of the old-time white ball players who played against him would agree. He was like Hall of Famer Ty Cobb. He played hard and would do anything to win. He would run right over you if you were blocking the base, cut you with his spikes. And that fella was strong. Once he tore the steering wheel off a car. He could grab a baseball and loosen up the leather with his bare hands. He played center field and stood right behind second base. If the ball was hit over his head, he'd run back and get it. He'd just outrun the ball and could hit to all fields. Fans would chant, "Charlie, Charlie, Charlie," when he came to bat. Didn't matter where it was pitched, he'd get wood on it. No pitch was a bad pitch to him. Buck Leonard was the same way. Couldn't get a ball past him. Some called him the Black Garrick. He was one of our finest all-around players. Real clean fella. Didn't smoke or curse. He had a real nice swing. You could always count on him getting on base. He killed fastballs and was an excellent first baseman. Dick Say and Newt Allen were two of our best second basemen. And Pop Lord was one of the most superb all-time shortstops in the world. They nicknamed him the Black Wagner. In Cuba, they called him a cuchara, the shovel, because he had big hands. He would scoop up grounders, dirt and everything, and zing 'em to first base. Willie Wells was an excellent shortstop, too. Both of those guys are in the Hall of Fame. Ray Dandridge was one of our top third basemen. He was real flashy, quite a showman. He would scoop up the ball and throw it all in one motion. We called him Squatty because he was so bow-legged. You could drive a train through his legs, but not a baseball. Judy Johnson was an outstanding third baseman, too. He would charge the ball. He wasn't as flashy as Dandridge, but he always got the job done and was a very smart fella. In the outfield, we had Ted Page, Jimmy Crutchfield, Turkey Stearns, and, of course, Cool Papa Bell, who was the fastest man in all of baseball. He was like lightning. Cool Papa could circle the bases in 12 to 13 seconds. One minute, he was standing still on first base, and next thing you know, he was slowing up at third. More than once, he scored from first base on a bunt. He was so fast, Jesse Owens, the Olympic sprinter, wouldn't race him without his track shoes. And he was always in shape. Never had to worry about him getting tired. He could hit and had a good arm. Many folks don't know he used to be a pitcher, an old knuckleballer. He was a real quiet fellow, too. He wouldn't argue at all. That's why they called him Cool Papa, because he was so easygoing. Behind the plate, we had highly skilled catchers like Pepper Bassett, Josh Gibson, Quincy Troop, and Roy Campanella. But Raleigh Biz Mackey was possibly the greatest defensive catcher in Negro League history. Roy Campanella, the catcher who played with Jackie Robinson on the Brooklyn Dodgers, learned everything he knew about catching from Mackey. When you saw Campy's moves behind the plate, you were seeing Mackey. He was a great technician, handled pitchers with ease, and could throw to second base from a crouch. Couldn't fool around with him. Nobody would try to steal on Biz. He'd throw you out. He didn't drop many balls either, especially fly balls. He didn't even take off his mask to catch them. Solid hitter, too. On the mound, we had fireballers like Smokey Joe Williams, Willie Foster, Rube's younger brother, Andy Cooper, Hilton Smith, Verdell Mathis, Cannonball Dick Redding, Bullet Rogan, Leon Day, and many others. But the most famous of all pitchers was Leroy Satchel Paige. He got his nickname Satchel when he was a boy. He used to work at the train depot, carrying folks' bags and satchels. Satchel was a masterful pitcher, and by far the greatest showman. People came out by the thousands to see him pitch. If a team needed some cash, Wilkinson would send him out there to pitch a few innings for him. Satchel made a lot of money doing that. He pitched for more than 250 teams. That fellow was something else. We'd be waiting around for Satchel to show up for a game, and he was nowhere to be found. Then he'd arrive just a few minutes before game time with a police escort, sirens blazing and all. He always kept us laughing. He would walk real slow to the mound and let his long arms dangle. Satchel didn't believe in running. A few times he called in the outfield and struck out the side without giving up a single hit. He was tall and skinny. If he turned sideways, he'd disappear. His arms were just as skinny around his biceps as his wrists. We used to say they were like rubber hoses or long black snakes. Nowadays, pitchers pitch maybe once or twice a week and rest a few days in between. Not Satchel. He pitched every day. He lived on that mound. He said he kept his arm young by taking boiling hot showers. He would tie a big Turkish towel around his arm and let the hot water run over it. Nowadays, pitchers use ice for their arms, but back then they used heat. He also rubbed his arm with this real hot snake oil that some American Indian fella gave him. He wouldn't give up that secret formula for anything. When Satchel pitched, he raised his big foot up high, let it come down, and then whipped the ball by you. Satchel was nothing but fastball. Even his slow stuff was fast. We knew what was coming, but we still couldn't hit it. The ball would be moving so fast, it looked like a little white pill by the time it got to the plate. And it would jump just a little bit before it got to you, just enough to make you miss it. Satchel wasn't legendary only for his speed, but also for his control. He could put the ball wherever he wanted to put it. Most pitchers warmed up by throwing over home plate or a glove, but Satchel used a candy wrapper or a bottle cap. A catcher only had to hold up his glove, and Satchel would hit it. Satchel liked to drive fast, too. drove like a demon. He'd get stopped for speeding in some small towns on his way to a game. Once he got stopped, and the judge fined him $25. Satchel took out a wad of cash and started peeling off $10 bills. Told the judge, "Here's 50. I'm coming back through tomorrow." Yeah, that Satch was something else. One of Satchel's rivals at the plate was Josh Gibson. Josh was hitting that ball out of ballparks everywhere. He hit more home runs than anybody except Turkey Stearns. Some say Josh hit the ball out of Yankee Stadium. Not even Babe Ruth did that. He had the most beautiful, natural swing. His body was built for hitting. Slender waist, big, muscular back. He would roll his sleeves up so the pitcher could see his powerful arms. He stood flat-footed and would just mash the ball. The ball would shoot straight toward the outfield and still be on its way up as it cleared the fence. It would land about 400 or 500 feet away. If an infielder had tried to catch it before it took off, the ball would have probably taken him with it. Josh hit everything. Fast balls, curved balls. Couldn't fool him. Pitchers would just have to pitch and pray. He was so good, people started calling him Mr. Black Baseball. Some even called him the Black Babe Ruth. But others say that the Babe should have been called the White Josh Gibson. Josh was a real jolly fella. We used to say he was like a big kid, and great behind the plate, too. When he started out, he wasn't as good a catcher as he was a hitter, but he wanted to become a complete player. So he really worked hard on developing his arm and, most of all, his accuracy. He became one of the better defensive players. He could pick you off at second from a crouch. The man was awesome. But you know something? We had many Josh Gibsons in the Negro Leagues. We had many Satchel Pages. But you never heard about them. It's a shame the world didn't get to see them play. The Negro Leagues were home to some of the greatest baseball players that ever lived. Guys like Stuart Slim Jones, John Beckwith, Dick Lundy, and Oliver Marcel. Newt Allen, Dobie Moore, Jimmy Crutchfield, Pepper Bassett, Dan and Sam Bankhead, Buck O'Neill, Bingo DeMoss, Joe Black, Roy Partlow, Ted Page, Alex and Ted Double Duty Radcliffe, Chet Brewer, Quincy Troop, Andy Pullman Porter, Piper Davis, Walter McCoy, Mule Miles, Wild Bill Wright. There were just so many. Can't even name them all. Unfortunately, most of them will never receive the recognition they deserve. We can only hope the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown will someday open the doors to more of these fellas.